will you please take roll?
Thank you.
Present.
Michael Williams. Oh, now it's on. Okay, Michael Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Timothy T. Jones.
Present.
Renard Chow.
Present.
Anthony Gonzalez.
Present.
Angela Honzik. Present. Hanjia Meng. Present. Jeffrey Moline.
Present.
Thank you. And we have a quorum.
Thank you. So I am going to read the mission statement. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirements that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. So, moving on to agenda item 1, public comments for items not on the agenda. Moderator, please open it up for public comment.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Will you let us know if there's anyone available to make public comment in your room?
There is not.
Wonderful. We are accepting public comment for items not on the agenda via WebEx. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand by tapping that hand button in the at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users may dial *3 to raise their hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. Commenters will be given 5 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And it appears that there are no requests for comment at the moment.
Thank you. We move on to agenda item 2A, report of the committee chair, myself. And we are going to approve the July 27, 22 Qualifications Committee meeting minutes. Does any member wish to make a motion?
I'll motion to approve. I'll motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
Are there any questions or comments from our members on the minutes? Seeing none, I will now open it up. To public comment. Moderator?
Yes, will you please announce the status of your room every time before we proceed to online comments?
Yes, I will. I see none in our room.
Fantastic. We are accepting public comment on the motion online. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Ms. Huddy, please take a roll.
Thank you. Jeffrey Moline.
Present.
I believe it needs to either be a yes, no, or abstain. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Hanjia Meng. Yes. Angela Honzik?
Yes.
Anthony Gonzalez?
Abstain.
Renard Chow?
Yes.
Timothy T. Jones?
Yes.
And Michael Williams?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. So I will read the report of the consideration. Thank you. I'm going to read a report of the consideration of the CPA Experience Requirements Task Force, CERT, findings and recommendations. So the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the Qualifications Committee with an update on the findings and recommendations from the consideration of Certified Accountant Experience Requirement Task Force, otherwise known as CERT. The CERT was formed in 2022 to evaluate the experience requirements for CPA licensure, specifically the necessity and sufficiency of the attest experience requirement. At its November 2022 meeting, the CBA adopted CERT's first recommendation that the attest experience requirement is necessary for the authority to sign reports on attest engagements. At its January 2023 meeting, the CBA adopted CERT's second recommendation that the current attest experience requirement is sufficient for licensure. In addition, the CBA adopted CERT's recommendations to direct staff to create a pathway to allow for accounting firm owners to obtain qualifying attest experience, explore how current regulations may be amended to more thoroughly define reciprocity requirements for applicants obtaining licensure with the authority to sign reports on attest engagements, expand outreach to better inform consumers regarding the difference in services performed by CPAs who maintain a license with or without the authority to sign reports on attest engagements. Items to consider include a dedicated page on the CBA website and a podcast, and that the outreach include various stakeholders such as faculty and students. Emphasize the importance of client notification in instances where a firm provides attest services when the firm owners do not have the authority to sign reports on attest engagements. That concludes my presentation. I will now open it up to members for questions or comments. Seeing none, I open it up to... Seeing none, I note that there is no one in the audience. Moderator?
We are accepting public comment online. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the lower part of your screen. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner and send that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Thank you, moderator. So we will go to 2C, discussion and approval of proposed 2024 Qualifications Committee meeting dates. Does any member wish to make a comment? Or motion, excuse me?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Are there any questions or comments from our members? Seeing none, I note that there is no one in attendance, moderator.
We are accepting public comment online. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the lower part of your screen. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner and send that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Ms. Huddy, please take roll or motion.
Thank you. Anthony Gonzalez?
Yes.
Hanjiao Meng,
Yes.
Timothy Jones,
Yes.
Angela Honzik,
Yes.
Jeffrey Moline,
Yes.
and Michael Williams.
Yes.
Apologies, I have one more. Reynard Chow.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will go to the report of the California Board of Accountancy from Liaison Nancy Corrigan.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here, Chair Williams and members of the QC. I did get to say hello to most of you, and of course CBA staff. I have known a lot of you for a while, so I haven't been on this end of the table in a while. And you haven't met in a while in person, so I'm sure it's fantastic to be back in person, dive in and get busy. And I have to tell you, I served on this committee. Well, I started with the Rule 69 subcommittee for 2 or 3 years. Then I was on the QC for 8, I think it was 9. They extended me a year because we were in the middle of a special project. So I have like 11 years back a little ways. And I got to know Mike on that committee. And then, of course, Mike finished his term and then re-upped again. So I still get to see him at board meetings and everything. So it is my pleasure to be here. I'm very happy to be here. And what you're doing is very important work. The board appreciates it. And the work of our 3 advisory committees is very, very important to the work that we do as far as it goes to consumer protection. So I have some summaries here that staff have prepared for me that really relate to the March and the May meetings. They're kind of highlights that encompass what's been happening maybe since you all met in July of 2022, which seems like forever and again, but here we are, and you'll get into the routine, so not a problem. So at the March 23rd, 24th meeting, we approved a letter supporting NASBA regarding proposed amendments to the Uniform Accountancy Act model rules that had to do with the conditional credit period extending beyond the 18 months. And we directed staff to work with our president to generally support it, but to ask for more information on how they were determining what the additional should be, going from, at that point, 18 to 24 months. So that date, we adopted our meeting dates for 2024, just like you just did. And kind of a continuing topic that we've been addressing for a while are issues or challenges with the peer review program and our PROC being able to obtain certain information that is needed. So that topic was kicked to the Committee on Professional Conduct to do some work, and that is ongoing now as we speak. We at that meeting requested staff to provide information on the SURE project, Students Understanding the Requirements for a Certified Public Accountant. And I really am, in favor of this project. I think it's fantastic. It is much needed. And the purpose of that SURE project is to provide straightforward educational requirements for CPA licensure. And that's to candidates, that's to educational institutions, that's to professional associations, and anybody else that needs an understanding, because there is so much confusion. And in thinking about it, we're one of 55 jurisdictions, so there is massive. But so our staff are going to do a great job and pull that together. So that's kind of a project that is ongoing by phase, very, very important. We directed directed staff to work with President Salazar on drafting a letter to the AICPA regarding their draft pipeline acceleration plan. It was an 8-point plan. It's a 12-point plan now. Anyway, pipeline is a big issue. Lots of people, lots of organizations are working on it. So we support it and basically have feedback along the way depending on what their recommendations are. So at that meeting, the March meeting, we rescinded a prior approval of regulatory text in sections 41 and 50.1 that had to do with accounting firms that provided test services where the owners only have general licensure authority and not a test licensure authority. And then that was rescinded. That was put on hold because the CERT task force, which Mr. Williams just reported on, was given the task of going to work on that. and determining that we did determine, I was on the task force with Mike, that the test experience and the number of hours that we look at as a guideline are still important and still relevant. And so we went forward with that. And then that allowed the CBA to kind of finalize the regulations back in to kind of include terminology for that sort of thing. So do you have any questions so far regarding anything I've been covering? Do we need to take pause for public at all, do you think? Or I can continue and do it at the end?
I think we'll wait
That'd be
until the
good?
end.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's great. All right. So going on to May 18th, 2023, this year already, we discussed NASBA's exposure draft regarding the conditional credits being extended from 18 months to 30 months. And we agreed, CBA agreed there should be an extension of time, but still wrestling with how did they get from 18 to 30. You know, we like to have our homework done. We like to have our facts and everything. And of course, every jurisdiction would have to rule on that, right? Because the 55 jurisdictions have their own rules and regulations. So we just wanted more information, though, that we generally do support that more time would be warranted for those conditional credits. We have a couple of topics and continuing on the peer review issue, how to obtain the peer review documentation, especially those uploaded to AICPA's online access tool. Some difficulty there, and we directed staff to work on legislative language to ensure that firms make data available online reporting to accessible to CBA so that we have that information to work with. So that's been a challenge, and staff have diligently been working on that, and I see Michelle smiling. So, we also discussed ensuring receiving all failed peer review reports from the AICPA. That's very important information for us to have, but especially firms licensed in California, but they have headquarters in other states. So that's just a particular challenge as far as getting that information. So again, we directed staff to please work with President Salazar and draft another letter and really clarify what it is we need, and that the AICPA utilize a data mining approach in collaboration with CalCPA so that we can have the data that we need in going forward. So now you probably have heard or might be aware that we were, staff were performing along with DCA a fee analysis. You know, one of the things we're always working with is months in reserve for our budget. How are we doing, you know, yet we want to be fair to candidates and to license renewals and that sort of thing. But there are just times when we have to look at those fees and decide, is it time for an adjustment? In history, those fees have decreased. You know, over my years, I've paid higher and lower, and it just depends on the fund balance. And so it went really low one time, I think $50 or something, then it jumped back up. Anyway, that's kind of life in the big city, right? So, we did approve renewal fees, and then it was kind of brought to our attention maybe to take a look and would it be more fair to and reasonable and palatable given COVID and given everything else going on in the world to maybe have those, initiate those like a two-step renewal process. And so that's kind of what we did. And, but we maintained the statutory cap on the application fees for CPAs and also firm application fees. So it was primarily the renewals that we did that for. We reviewed some proposed legislation on SB Senate Bill 544 that had to do with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. We all know what that is and the precautions we have to take, and how state bodies conduct meetings via teleconference. So we had some emergency provisions during COVID, and now those have been more formalized to make kind of equitable, transparent communication, yet protect all of our privacy and everything else. So do you have any questions thus far on the board materials? It looks like we're doing good. Okay. So it's a lot of information, but I can direct you to the website. You can review the materials are recorded, the minutes are there, the materials are there. So you can go back, you know, in history and take a look at things you need to catch up on or be better informed about. Our next meeting is tomorrow and the next day. So thus being here today made it very easy for me. And the only other thing I want to say is on behalf of my fellow board members, I truly appreciate all of you, the work you do, the fact that you're volunteering, you're giving your time to a very, very important function. And I know exactly what you all do because I did it for a long time. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, for your presentation, and we'll open it up to any comments by the members. But I just wanted to thank you for your time, and I've worked with you for a long time, and you're on these different committees, and you spend a lot of time, and so thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Any questions or comments for Nancy from seeing none? And there was no one in the audience. I would open up to moderator for any comments or questions.
We are accepting public comments via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen or typing the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and sending that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you, moderator. So next on the agenda, the report of activities for the initial licensing unit. And first up is Jennifer Huddy with the licensing activity report.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Huddy, and I'm the manager of the initial licensing unit. This licensing activity report, or LAR, is a standing item at each board meeting and provides data related to examinations, initial licensing, and renewals. The LAR before you today covers the period of time between July 1st, 2022 and May 31st, 2023. The LAR begins with the reporting of processing times. Processing times were below 30 days on May 31st, 2023, but we are expecting a slight increase in processing times due to the recent server migration. We anticipate the increase in processing times to be brief. Now, if you turn your attention to page 4 of the LAR, I will present on a couple items that the QC might find interesting. The initial licensing unit has approved just over 3,000 applications for CPAs and firms. And looking at CPAs specifically, 727 of the 2,699 applications were for a license with a test authority. This includes licensees converting their existing license to one with a test authority. And that concludes my presentation. I'll now turn it back over to Chair Williams and am happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Huddy. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none and seeing no one in the audience, I turn it over to public comment. Moderator?
We are accepting public comment online. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. You may also request a comment by typing the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner and sending that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you, moderator. And we will go to the report on Qualifications Committee subcommittee meetings by Ms. Huddy again.
Thank you, Chair Williams. So, good morning again. This report on the Qualifications Committee meetings begins with the notation that since July 2022, the QC has held 3 subcommittee meetings to conduct interviews with employers and applicants to review work papers of a test experience. The subcommittee meetings reviewed a total of 13 Section 69 reviews and 5 personal appearances. 10 applicants were recommended for approval of a CPA license, and 8 applicants were recommended for deferral. This concludes my report. At this time, I will turn it back to Chair Williams, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Huddy. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee? I have one. You know, I see that, and I am on these candidate interviews at times. You said 10 recommendation for approval, but 8 deferrals. Is that what I heard?
That's correct. We had 13 Section 69 reviews and 5 personal appearances. So that's a total of 18.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of deferrals, right? Any comments from the staff?
Sure, I'm happy to respond to that. Michelle Center, licensing chief. One of the things that we did over the last year was really shore up the process that we are using internally to determine who goes to the qualifications committee. We internally now really make sure that those that are required to be there are sent automatically. And those that we elect to go, we elect those based on what we have in regulations. That gives us authority to make a determination on a case-by-case basis. I think we probably are sending slightly less of them to QC. So you are probably, the ones that you are seeing are ones that are really more questionable than some that you have probably seen in the past. Those maybe who have been on this committee longer may have noticed that over time, that we are trying to really honor your time, but also make sure that anyone that we think needs to go to QC is being routed there appropriately.
Thank you. And that does make sense for the committee or the candidate meetings I've been on. I have noticed that documentation and things are, probably not as good as I've seen in the past. So that makes sense. And I know you just started back, Ms. Huddy. So, but I was thinking, we're at 50%. That's more than usual, from my experience. Any other comments from the members? Seeing no one in the audience, moderator, please open up to public comment. Moderator, can you open it up to public comment, please? Seeing none in the audience.
We are accepting public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the lower part of your screen to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue?
I do. Thank you, moderator. And so we will go to 4C, discussion regarding the students' understanding of requirements for certified public accountant project. Michelle Center.
Thank you. I want everyone to start by getting your vocal cords ready so that you're ready to engage and give me some feedback at the end of my presentation. Fair warning, right? So again, good morning, everyone. I'm going to expand on a topic that Ms. Corrigan presented on in her board meeting update and information to you all. At the beginning of each year, traditionally, the newly elected board leadership team meets with the executive staff of the board. And when we do that, we talk about what the priorities should be of the year. One of the topics that was brought up by staff this January was the fact that we received numerous inquiries that suggest that maybe our applicants lack an understanding of the educational requirements for examination and for licensure. It is very much a number one topic in terms of our emails that we receive. It was determined that increasing clarity in the requirements and investigating options that would provide students with ways to make more informed decisions regarding their education may positively contribute to the pipeline and reduce frustration. The project was given a catchy title because I'm sure you saw the title in the board item and it seems a little awkward and long. That's because it stands for something catchy called Sure CPA. So just use Sure CPA, because sometimes I have to really think in order to come up with what Sure CPA stands for. So to kick off the project, the board approved the project goal as clarifying the educational requirements by implementing solutions that will provide future CPA applicants educational institutions, professional associations, and other stakeholders with straightforward educational requirements for CPA licensure. I think it's important to note that the focus is on clarity. Changes to the requirements themselves would need to relate to providing clarity to fit within the stated goal. We identified 4 phases, which will serve as benchmarks as we progress through the multi-year project. Phase 1 is defined as information gathering. We envision this phase as lasting through the end of 2023, giving us time to conduct outreach activities, both in person and virtually, and to create and promote an online survey. Staff also conducted a review of educational requirements in other states. Our findings were presented at the May CBA meeting, and they serve as a state scan, if you will, of requirements. And we believe that may be useful later when we look at potential initiatives that we want to consider. Also part of this phase is the evaluation of the CBA's process for reviewing applicants' college requirements. Some of you will get a taste of that later in our closed session. As we have noted, we are doing file review. So there is an interest in not only looking for methods that might provide for greater efficiency in terms of work that our staff do, but also methods that might allow for our applicants themselves to better self-evaluate their education against our educational requirements. Once we have required enough data from our outreach events, online survey, faculty partners, we will report that information to the board. We think that might happen in early 2024. We will then move on to phase 2, which is the developing and adopting of initiatives. At this point, staff will make recommendations to the board based on the information that we have gathered. It may be determined there is a need for new regulations or even legislation, or there could be a need for certain educational outreach materials to be updated or entirely new materials to be developed. We will proceed as the board directs us to, and that will be phase 3. This third phase, the implementation of initiatives, could very well be the lengthiest phase according to the calendar. While updating or developing outreach materials does not take that long, if we need to pursue regulatory or legislative changes, that does take time. The final phase, once ample time has passed to allow phase 3 changes to take effect, will be to collect feedback. We will be going back out to our stakeholders to help us gauge the success of this long-term project. First off, I want to invite all of you to take our online survey. It is posted to our CBA website, and we encourage you and invite all your friends to take the survey. But I also want to invite all of you to share any feedback that you have during this meeting today. And also during future opportunities when I come back to this group and provide you with updates. You are an important part in our licensing process. You get to see our applicants as they make their way right across that transition to licensure. So I think that you are in a good place to provide information to us about our educational requirements. So that concludes my presentation. I hope that some of you may have some comments or feedback, or I'm also happy to answer questions. Remember that time when I actually called on people?
I do. I'm going to open it up to member questions or comments. I just want to say that, and I've been working with Michelle and her team for a long time, and so much goes in on the background because of regulatory issue, all these things, and they know where to go find this stuff, but it's very tedious, and so it is helpful for the members, or especially the members, to give feedback or chat with the staff about these things, because we obviously have the insight from being practicing professionals, but they know all the ins and outs, and so what may seem like an easy exercise is not. So I just want to make everyone aware of that, or at least from what I've observed. But Any comments or thoughts from the members? I think I took the survey. I'm pretty sure I did.
Well, you might be the first one. So,
I took a survey, but a little while back. That wasn't for this? Well, at least I'm participating, right?
He is very active. So, for example, some of you, you're obviously leaders. You volunteered to be on this group. You may mentor individuals that are in your firms that are maybe on their track to get licensed, or maybe they have just been licensed. Those are individuals that may have made comments to you, may have provided you feedback, or maybe you as a professional have opinions and thoughts on whether or not you feel that their educational experience really prepared them for their career and the work that you are asking them to do. That's the kind of feedback that you might think, oh, that's just nothing. Those are just comments that I have. But for us, we don't often get to speak to those individuals. We do hear from individuals when they have questions, but we never hear from those that find it crystal clear. I know it's hard to believe, but we don't hear from those people. So it's really an opportunity, if any of you have that kind of mentorship role or you're working with new licensees, to really think about the comments, the questions they may have asked you. So I'll let it sit there for a moment and see if anyone has any comments. I thought I saw Rennie going for the mic. Did I see that, Rennie?
No. I think in terms of the educational requirements, can you just expand on what is not clear for these candidates? Because
you think it's clear?
In my personal experience, I think they're quite clear, and I don't know, maybe you can expand on that. Yeah. I
will say, I'll give you an example of one that we receive quite frequently, and that is there is a 10-unit requirement for ethics. And that individuals find that a little confusing. Oftentimes, wherever they are going to school, maybe there's only one ethics class in the accounting program. And so they get confused about what other courses may qualify in ethics. That's one of the more common questions that we receive. We also get people get confused about the fact that there are differences in requirements between the examination educational requirements and the licensure requirements. The fact that there are additional requirements for licensure, that's a question we get. Unfortunately, sometimes we also hear from individuals that received a degree in accounting, which as we know, I personally don't know where you can get a 4-year degree that requires 150 units. So we hear from those individuals and get questions about options for them to gain those additional units. Is that helpful? Yeah. Or does anyone hear those things, or maybe you found, or maybe your personal experience, like Rennie, it was simple. Did you use our materials, Rennie, or were you at an institution that provided really good guidance?
I actually used the board's materials, and I thought it was relatively straightforward. I mean, certainly differences between, how sort of institutions, maybe there are quarter systems or semester systems, but I thought it was pretty straightforward in my personal opinion. Yeah.
Thank you. I did recently do, I'm sorry. No. I did recently have a meeting with some faculty members, and they gave us really good feedback on our materials, and they thought they were very useful for their conversations with students. But they also reported back that they found that they were confusing to some of the students themselves. So they were really good tools for those who kind of know a little more than maybe some of the students know, if that makes sense. And so that's another piece of feedback that I think that was just a couple of weeks ago when I had some conversation with some faculty.
Yes, I was going to say, when I was licensed, there was not a 150-hour requirement. So, I went to Sac State, but we knew what we needed, and it seemed simple. So I would think that the institutions, when they're teaching their accounting classes, they're saying, well, if you want to be a California CPA, it requires 150, and here's how you would do it at this university or college. But I don't know.
I also received kind of feedback at that meeting I had with some faculty the other day that was a little bit of an aha moment for me, and maybe some of you could give me some feedback on whether or not you think this is common. And that is that individuals that are getting their education, they're going through their courses, they may not know where they plan to get licensed. And so there's sometimes that confusion about which educational requirements they should be on track for, because they're not sure what state they will move to and where they will be getting their license. Is that common?
In my experience, we have a number of people at our firm who transfer between offices in different states, and I do receive the feedback that from other states such as Massachusetts or Illinois that our information available seems to be more confusing to those individuals from other states. You mentioned that there was a scan of state education requirements. Along those same lines, is there an open line of communication between the different jurisdictions as to what resources are working for applicants in other states that we might be able to benefit from?
We do have the opportunity to engage in those conversations with states. I will say most of you are aware of NASBA's model rules, and NASBA creates these model rules as a set of models, not requirements, for states to consider as they set policy and regulatory requirements. And what we did notice was there's this set of models out there, and states really differ. Not a lot, but they do differ, right? So it does make us hard to share. Like, for example, California requires more ethics than I think any other state, if I remember correctly. That is definitely a priority that you see in our requirements that you may not see elsewhere. Might be a reason why we get so many questions on it, right? So it's hard to share, but I would say that we're trying to do that more than we have in the past. One of the things that we do is now every time a state sends out their, like we have the update, for example, states have their newsletters, and we scan those newsletters now for any nuggets that we think, oh, wow, that looks good, let's steal it, right? So that's something that we're doing now, and definitely as we move forward and think about should we change what we have, I think that's a really good idea to look towards whether other states might use.
A comment that I have is that an opportunity may exist for each of us as committee members to connect with our local institutions, colleges, and the like that have accounting programs, and maybe interact with students that are actually in the mix of their education component. And maybe we can do two things. One is there's sort of a survey element of that. We can find out what sort of challenges there are. And two, that we can facilitate education and maybe provide them guidance on where to go and who to talk to, so that each of them have the opportunity to get the resources they need to be successful in licensure in California.
I would expand on that. I wrote a note about an ambassador or influencer type program where the state could put together materials and work with students at some of the larger universities that apply for licensure to provide them the information that they can develop resources or talking points specific to the school's program to help other students on campus be able to ask questions. And that might be a easier or more efficient way to
outreach to more individuals through a small ambassador type program.
I think that's great. We will take that down. There's a couple things going on. There is a, does anyone live near Pomona? Cal Poly Pomona. Is it Cal Poly? Yes. Anyone near Cal Poly Pomona? Well, we are going to be on site for our board meeting, our next board meeting in September. We will also be doing events with students and with faculty. We probably will have a separate undergraduate outreach event and then one for graduates. So we are doing those types of things. I'm happy to take back these ideas of really utilizing our committee members more in terms of acting as ambassadors, providing information. I think those are great opportunities. We're also working with Cal CPA has a group of newly licensed. I cannot remember the name of it. Please forgive me. And they also work closely with a fraternity for the accounting profession. So those are also entities that we are working with.
I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts on this topic. One is that as far as the requirements, it was always clear to me. I also had the luxury of working under someone who was on this committee, so he was very familiar with the requirements. Some of the questions I've heard in the past in regards to the 150-hour credit rule, my experience is not everyone is familiar with what is the composition requirement of those. Some folks are under the impression they need a master's degree versus just having 150 hours. So I've had conversations with a lot of folks about that, and there's always questions there. I've also had questions and conversations with others about someone who had an active CPA license that went inactive, or maybe they didn't complete their continuing education and aren't really clear about what it takes to get that back. And I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. It's I wanted to mention one of the differences for a test in other states is that you do not need hours. So part of that CERT, committee was that you need a certain number of hours to be able to perform an audit. And many states don't. Once you pass the exam, you're a CPA and you can perform any function. So I always like to think that the California CPA is the gold standard. But that's my opinion for me. But and there's a reason people want to get licensed in California and then move to other places, because we get a fair amount of foreign experience that are required to come before the committee, but they want to be licensed in the state of California. So I see no moderator. There are no individuals here. Can you open up for public questions, comments?
We are accepting public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen, or typing the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner and sending that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue, Mr.?
Yes, thank you, moderator.
Mr.
So
Chair?
we will go to Section 5, closing business, and then agenda items for future qualification committee meetings. Do I have any thoughts, questions from the committee? There is no one here in the public, so can I get public comment from you, moderator? A request?
Absolutely. If you would like to make a comment about future agenda items, please tap that hand button to raise your hand, or type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Seeing no request for comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you, moderator. So before we go into closed session, I just wanted to thank the members and the new members. Welcome. And we haven't met in a year, and this is the first time for you. There's a lot of stuff that we do, that the committee, that the board does. We interact well with them. I thank Nancy for coming. It's really a rewarding experience, and it's interesting. And I also want to give a shout out to the staff, because they do a lot of work, and it's nice to work with them. I've been doing this for a while, and it's a good group. So again, thank you, everyone. And now we will go into closed session.